Hi, everybody. I'm Jenyce. I'm so excited to introduce you to one of my most favorite people. Her name is Amy Day, and she is a decision coach. Does that sound like it would be helpful for all of you? It sure has been for me. I'm really grateful that Amy is my friend, and she has helped me tremendously with some big decisions in my life lately. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, it's so great to be here. I'm so glad, and the feeling's mutual. You are one of my favorite people. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it is my honor to have you here with us today. And I just love your background. It's so impressive. Amy holds a certification from Stanford University Continuing Studies in Decision Education. How about that?
Mhm.
She also has a certification in counseling and advising, and she has 20 plus years of experience as on the board of the International Society of Decision Professionals. I didn't even know there was like an international society of that.
I was recently elected this past summer. So I have 20 plus years of experience in decision education, and I've been a member of the Society of Decision Professionals for a long time. But they recently advanced me to the board and elected me, and it's pretty amazing. Uh, And what's so fascinating is people have not heard of a decision coach because there's a handful of us in the world in the space of personal decision making, really advancing the cause of like, how can people get more of what they want out of their decisions? So there's this whole science field called decision analysis and decision quality, super nerdy, that huge companies use to make more money and be more successful in the marketplace. And what's so fascinating is my dad was one of the founders of that field over 50 years ago at Stanford University. You can now get a PhD in it. And I was raised in this ether of this decision laboratory, and me and my siblings and the other children of this generation of great thinkers were the unexpected byproduct. So while they were doing all this stuff for businesses, we all integrated into our lives as whole people. So it wasn't until, gosh, a number of years ago that I realized I was like, wait, I think about decisions totally differently. Like, it's amazing to me. And so I started to kind of back it up and go, what does the science teach us? What does brain research teach us? What does social emotional learning teach us? And what is Amy Day's experience having integrated this into my life, my entire life? And I put it down into a framework. And and it's to support people like you in making your next great decision. It's not my decision. I teach people how to decide, not what to decide. And in that, people can just feel stuck or confused or tangled or overwhelmed or anxious or worried that they're going to make a decision they regret, right? Like all of that is a human experience. And I would say that's the symptom that you have a decision lurking. When you feel those things, I know I ask myself those questions. I have that same human experience. I'll say, is there a decision lurking that I feel confused about? And then I can start to use my own methodology on my own decisions to make my next great decision.
Wow. Your background and growing up in that environment, you're so blessed to have that just integrated into how
Mhm.
you've learned over the years. And now to take that thing that comes so naturally to you and
Mhm.
then put a framework together to help others. Uh, so you've added on to what you already have integrated in yourself. You've
Mhm.
added on the coaching modality uh,
Mhm.
to make it more usable for us regular human beings to be happier in our lives.
Right. I feel like I'm a translator, is what I am. Like I translate this super heady experience into something that everyday people can understand and that they can see how their head and their logical brain and their big intuitive heart can be integrated in making a great decision. Like, we don't need to reject part of ourselves to move forward. Actually, the genius is we get to integrate ourselves and move forward powerfully.
I feel like that is a big movement right now that you are already utilizing, that a lot of us are just learning about, is that integrating the head and the heart is where the power is in creating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you might wonder, what's a decision? Sometimes people are like, well, what is a decision? If you were to look at the definition of a decision, it's to cut off. So when I talk to people about decision making, so your audience might be saying, well, so why is it so stressful to make a decision? It's because you're literally cutting off futures that you're not going to have. Like, that's where it produces anxiety for me. I'm like, that Amy Day is not going to live that future or that future or that future because I'm choosing this future.
Yeah.
And there's a lot involved with that sometimes, of releasing who you were or what you had, or redefining yourself, or just redefining a little bit of your life, or moving to a new house, right? It's all these things, but you're cutting off futures. That's what creates anxiety or stress, right? Is that there's a future you're not going to live. And it's also, the other definition for a decision is posing a question, which I love, because so much of my work is based in questions. Because as a person who's lived this experience, when I make a decision, there are questions that automatically load in my head to ask myself. And so now I have them on paper. It's like, oh, here's the questions, just to make it easier to kind of go, yeah, I'm covering all the bases. I can move forward powerfully.
Yes, the taking the uncertainty out of it by having the questions available is kind of calms our brain, takes that anxiety away. Also, it helps us be more confident, it sounds like, because all, like you said, all the bases are covered, and that would make me feel much more comfortable making a hard decision. So,
right.
why do some of us get hung up in like analysis paralysis?
Well, I think that, like, when I think about decision making as sort of a continuum of people who are super decisive and can make decisions so quickly, and you're like, I'm so envious because they can make them quickly. They might step back later and actually say, wait, that didn't work out so well. I didn't get what I wanted. They didn't slow down enough to take the time to make their great decision, right? They didn't actually connect to what they wanted. And on the other side is analysis paralysis, of like this fear of doing it wrong, of maybe there's a better option out there. And in this continuum, we get stuck in this swirl of uncertainty. You loaded the question perfectly. So when we make a decision, right, we put our thought into it, make a great decision. And then there's uncertainty in the middle. And then we have an outcome. Now, our society says, oh, we need to evaluate decisions by outcomes. Did you pass the test? Oh, did you get in a car accident? You must not be a good driver. Oh, you must not be a good student if you didn't pass the test. Like, we make these assumptions. Maybe your company is not doing well. You must be a bad business person. Right? We look at the outcomes and say it means you made a bad decision. And that's actually not true. Because the uncertainty was right here in the middle, right? COVID, perfect example of uncertainty. For people in COVID, if you took a student in college, I talked to college professors and researchers, they're like, I have students who are withering on Zoom. They have no human contact. There's a huge downside to that uncertainty. Was it a bad decision to take a programming class or whatever it was? No. it was that there was uncertainty. All of a sudden, we're on Zoom. There are other students who are thriving, who are absolutely thriving in that space of being online, being able to be off camera. It actually serves them. So we think of uncertainty as being just downside. It can be upside too. But we get to start getting really clear about where our power is. It is not in outcomes, it's in decisions. And if we're making quality decisions, the likelihood of a good outcome goes up, right? But we beat ourselves up for outcomes. And it's wired into us, right? It's like, what do we see? What are we experiencing, right? It's wired into our biology.
Yes, our biology. So in our biology is where we hold our experiences and our beliefs, our belief system.
Right.
So what you're talking about with the outcomes and the way society utilizes outcomes is judgment. We make a judgment. And we're not taking into consideration what I'm hearing you say, uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually don't take the time to say, oh, I had this outcome. How was the decision? Oh, would I do it the same next time? What happened? It's an opportunity for learning, right? It's an opportunity for you to really reflect. Like if you were dealing with a 5-year-old and you said, oh, this didn't go well, what were the choices you made? You wouldn't yell at them and say, well, that was stupid. You'd say, oh, well, what did we learn? Right. But we don't necessarily give ourselves that same grace of like, what did you learn? Maybe you learned that these uncertain things happen, that COVID happens, or whatever the uncertainty is, big or small. You can also recognize, like, I didn't have that piece of information. Next time, I'm going to ask these bigger questions, right? Good job. You made a decision, you took action. Great. Now reflect and say, would I do it the same way again? If you've made a great decision, do it again, even if you had a bad outcome. If you're like, nope, it was a great decision, great, do it again next time. Your odds of getting a good outcome are high, right?
Do you all see why I love this lady so much? You make me feel so good about myself and decisions that I've made. Thank you so much.
You should feel good when you make good decisions. We all know when we've made a bad decision. We get feedback usually from the world that bad outcome, bad decision. The dangerous one, bad outcome. I'm sorry, good outcome for a bad decision. Then we go, oh, it's no big deal. I'm magical. I can text and drive all I want. I'll be safe because I'm magical. Nope. Odds are you're going to have an accident.
Sure.
Right. That's actually the most dangerous. Bad decision, good outcome. The most painful, definitely, is you've made a great decision and you have a bad outcome. And it's just such an opportunity to stretch into that space of being kind to yourself and saying, I made a great decision. Bottom line. And I'm just going to keep moving forward and care for myself. There's like decision after care. Yeah. It's like, it's okay. You get to care for yourself. There's a human in there, right? We're not machines.
And good decision, bad outcome could be for our growth.
Yeah.
Opportunities, maybe it'll steer us in a direction that is more in alignment with our true self.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But, it's funny when you free up yourself from self beat up and you actually get into a reflective state, right? And like of positive growth as a human. Think about how much more time you have, how much more bandwidth you have. When you're busy dwelling on how it's your fault for an outcome, it actually takes you out of the game. Yes. That's the tragedy, that it actually costs us so much in that self beat up state when it's not necessarily our decision that was the problem.
Wow. Yes, it takes time to beat yourself up, to dwell in self-pity or whatever it looks like. And it takes all of your energy. So that makes so much sense to me. Is there a system
Mhm.
that I can ask myself that will help me make a better decision next time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, uh, what I love is our big framework at Clarity for Action. I have a nonprofit, and our big framework is for a whole person decision is 4 questions, 4 big questions. And I like you to think about them as like a circle. Okay, like a circle's moving out. So the first pillar of a great decision is to understand who you are. So ask yourself, who am I? And so what we teach is like strategies and techniques for understanding who you are. So that's like your values, your core values, your strengths, your vision for your life. Like it's like thinking about you're a ship on the ocean, right? And the ship is you, and you have like your values just as you're going along, right? And then you have strengths in that. It's like, am I a sailboat? Am I a big cargo ship? Like, what am I? What strengths do I have to deploy on this journey? But that vision is really, which way am I pointing my boat? So you could just be kind of, going wherever out there in the Pacific, or you could say, you know what? Here's what I kind of want. This is where I'd like to start heading and start practicing in that space as I move that way. So that's the who am I? How am I is a big one. And brain research and social emotional learning, all these areas teach us so much about how am I. It's this idea of, am I in a decision fit state? Am I hijacked by emotions right now? Right? AA has a great saying. It's called HALT, HALT. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? If I'm any of those things, if I don't have to make a decision and I'm any of those things, I do not. I'm not decision fit. My decision actually is get a snack. Talk to somebody who can help me deal with like my frustration or whatever I'm experiencing, right? If I'm lonely, maybe I need to spend some time connecting to myself. Maybe I need to spend some time with some friends, right? If I'm tired, maybe I need a nap. Like we get all bogged down with what it all means. It's like, no, we have a physiology that needs support. And maybe that physiology is not in a great state. So let's support it. Let's get ourselves in a more decision fit state. So that's one piece is your emotional state, right? And we're humans. We're born into it. Great. It's where our intuition lives. There's all sorts of amazing things. There's another amazing system in our brains called heuristics. It's a very fancy word. And heuristics are how we sort the thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces of information that come at us every day. It's how we sort them into buckets so we know what to do. It's how we automate our lives. It's miraculous. However, there's a little bug in the system, and the bug is called cognitive biases. And one that society talks about a lot is stereotyping. That's a missort. And it can be a missort because of the culture you were raised in, or just the environment, just the conversations, media, all kinds of inputs can get us off track. So what can we do about these biases? By the way, there are hundreds. What we can do is to start to be aware of them. They're part of that. How am I? So a couple that I really see come up in decision coaching. One is called sunk cost. Sunk cost is I've put so much time or money into something that I give it more weight in my decision. It's not that we shouldn't really pause and say, I have invested time and energy into a career, relationship, a degree. I've invested money into my car, my house, like whatever the things are that we're investing time and money into, we give it more weight. An important sort of balancing question would be, notice it's another question, would be to say, would I choose this today? What would make me choose this today? And to start to integrate that with what you value, right? That's why we start with who am I? Because you need to integrate that with your values, right? So you can start to ask countering questions to just look at the problem differently, to help with that, like raise that awareness that sunk cost might be at play. And we all kind of have go-to biases, and we're not going to always be aware of every bias at play. It's impossible. But that's one. The salience bias is another one, which is things get you in the feels. When we get emotional about things, angry, frustrated, sad, you see this in politics. We get pulled in and we make decisions based on that as opposed to what's really happening. So if that's one for you to say, oh gosh, it's getting me in the feels, step away, regulate, help yourself, and look at facts. Look at what you know, not what you feel, right? It's just opportunities to find balance. The final one that I'm just going to talk about quickly is confirmation bias. We look for information that supports our opinion. So if you just take TV news, okay, you got really right and you got really left and you got kind of in the middle, maybe. And it's like, if I'm only watching stuff that's, say, all the way in the right, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to think that this is the center. I'm going to think this is the center. And I'm not going to actually look here. Or if I'm only looking at the left, I'm not going to actually see other opinions. So I invite people with confirmation bias is to actually seek information that opposes your view. Reliable information. Seek reliable information that opposes your view, just to bust out your own bias in your thinking, right? Our internet searches are loaded to know what we want. So the internet feeds you what you want. It's full of confirmation bias. There are companies, researchers studying this. It's actually polarizing our society. Our search engines are polarizing our society. So if you want a real search on a search engine, go incognito, do a private browser. That's how you're going to get the center information. It's already compensating for your bias.
Yeah.
I know. It's frightening.
All of these biases have definitely influenced me through my whole life, and probably more so the older I get. So thank you for that awareness.
Yeah. And so just be aware. Don't beat yourself up. Go, okay, this is part of my biology. It's great. It's great. Outside of that, the third question. So you got, who am I? How am I? What could I? That's the decision process from decision science. That's like 6 steps that ask head and heart questions so you solve the right problem. That you identify not just what you care about in a big values sense, like I care about community, but measures of that. So what does that mean in this decision, right? So you start to have tangible understanding. You're integrating that head and heart in solving the right problem, getting more of what you want, and then assessing what you could do that offers you pieces. Like our brains are wired in channels. Ding, 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 ding. It's easier for our brains, saving energy. Just remember, your brain wants to save energy. You can come up with a bunch of options, and you can actually pick and choose the pieces you want in how you're going to execute. And when you hybridize these things, you actually find that you get more of what you want in
So
your decision.
I love that, because that is something that you've taught me to do. And that was so liberating.
Oh, good.
So liberating to know that I don't have to just stay in one channel. I can pick from all of them and put a unique channel together.
Yeah, because you're the decision maker. I think we forget that. It's like, wait, you're the decision maker. You get to choose, right? And it's liberating. It's like, wait, I get to choose. It also feels like there's a lot of responsibility. That responsibility piece is real, and it's part of that being kind to yourself. You are a learning human being for your whole life, just like a 5-year-old. It's just new and different opportunities for learning, right? So in that responsibility, you get to be just kind to yourself, right? And seek out information from people who might have knowledge, right? There's all these 6 simple steps, head and heart questions, to really get you the most out of your decision that you want. And so you've all this time, from all these 3 questions so far, you've been in a state of inquiry. Okay. When you make a decision, when you say, I've made a decision to, you're changing state. And you're changing state into committed action. Right? If we can't take committed action, I always look, maybe you solve the wrong problem. That's happened many times. Like, oh, maybe you solved the wrong problem. And we go back and reframe the problem. The second one is, maybe there was a value that was really important to you that you didn't capture. Let's look at your values and see if there's something missing. And that's where we can kind of get into the shoulds, like, oh, but I felt like I should not want that. Why not? Like, we judge what we should and shouldn't want, right? So those are the 2 areas that I go back to when somebody can't take action. Is, when somebody can take action because you can suddenly pick up the phone when before it weighed 1,000 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Or get on that difficult Zoom call, whatever the thing is, right? Right? You can take action because you've integrated your head and heart. That's how you know. But we go, I'm stuck. I can't take action. There's something wrong with me. No, you just missed something. You just missed something. It's fine. It's fine. You're not done with inquiry. It's fine. So when you get in a committed action state, that's when you move forward in action. So that's how will I? And gosh, I invite everybody, stop trying to take action in ways that work for other people and not you. How much energy? I've done this myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just spent all that energy doing something that is just so totally not me. It's not just that it's out of my comfort zone. It is just not me. Why am I in this space? I was born with abilities and strengths. How about I operate out of my strengths? And some of my strengths are in enlisting help from people who have strengths that I don't have. I have my best friend, Cheryl. I'm like, Cheryl, I'm stuck. I got to do internet research and it's stressing me out. She's like, let me help you. I'm like, great. Like, we're not islands. We can create momentum. We can get support, but we can just be us. So in action, in how will I, it's really just creating a strategy for support, a plan of attack, strategies about how you want to get it done. It's also understanding if you're a night owl, right? Or a day owl, I suppose, right? It, like, where do you operate best? Only you know, right? But we actually don't slow down enough to say, wait, am I a solo artist or a band member? Right? Maybe you're somewhere on that continuum. But to really just recognize, how can I operate in the best space for me possible to be effective, to be an amazing decision maker?
Well, that to me sounds like authentic living.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I am unique. I don't have to take other people's same paths, I can create my own.
Yep.
And my own community for support.
Absolutely.
And my own reward system.
Yeah.
I believe that's important too.
I love that. So what you're talking about, okay, I didn't even think about talking about this, is a policy decision. A policy decision is when I do something, I'm going to create a reward system for myself. That's a policy. So you're automating a decision, which is I get a reward, right? When we automate decisions, when we make policy decisions, whether it's for safety or for self-support, whatever, right? When we do that, what's wonderful is we're automating our brain. It's going to use less energy. When we first start it, it takes time to create a habit. Once it's automated, that policy decision is loaded and you just execute it without even thinking.
You know, Amy Day, this is, by the way, I call it, as does she, the Amy Day way. When I hear you talk about making a decision with this format, it just sounds so non-threatening. It just sounds like a process that I'm supported in along the way. And especially the end result of it being automated once we get to that point where it's just, we don't even have to think about it anymore. We just be. Is that correct?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. When you, in any kind of personal work, whenever you start a practice, we can be impatient with ourselves. But think about it. Our brains are like a big, like grassland, right? And it's all overgrown with grass, and we have trails in it that we're used to walking on, right? So they can be good trails of like celebrating wins and rewarding ourselves or things like that. It can also be self beat up trail. There's all kinds of trails. Habits about drinking coffee in the morning. There's all these trails in your brain, right? When we create a new habit or practice for ourselves, we're walking through the tall grass and we have to walk over that a bunch of times before it's automated because we have to create a path in our brain, right? And there might be some sticks under there or a log, or maybe there's a frog in there that startles us or whatever. There's bumps along the way, but we get to just gently just keep walking that path to create a new habit. No researcher can tell you how long a new habit takes. It can be instant, like today, I'm not going to smoke ever again, and they don't. And it can be a lifetime of working on creating a new habit. There's no way to know how long. Just keep practicing. That's my best advice. Keep practicing.
That is the best way to describe creating new neural pathways that I have ever heard. That is the best strategy ever, ever. Congratulations.
I should put in my book that way.
So awesome. Yes, and Amy is an author as well, so stay tuned for information.
I'm working on it.
On that, as we both are, but yes,
Thanks.
and I'm definitely going to be one of the first people to order your book, because make sure you let me know right away. So, all right, so sometimes it's really hard to even know where to begin because there's an entanglement happening in our brains and around us. There's chaos. What do we do?
To recognize that decision fatigue could be coming up. Research has been done throughout the day. Our brain gets more and more tired given the number of decisions we make. It can be up to 35,000 in a day. So we're fatigued by the end of the day. Our brains are tired of making decisions. So give ourselves the opportunity to be approaching a decision when we're not already in a fatigued state. And I do want to speak to the idea that sometimes we're in a situation where we're on cognitive overload. There's too much going on. Happened to me in the hospital as my mother-in-law's, durable medical power of attorney, right? She's in crisis. I'm exhausted. She's really sick. everything, like I am not operating. I'm totally decision fatigued and I'm not decision fit. And I have to make decisions on her behalf. So in those situations, I bring in a proxy, a decision proxy, which would be the medical professionals around me, right? I find people who can bolster my decision making when I'm impaired. That's one. Number two, the reason, if you're not in a desperate, urgent situation, it feels really tangled. My guess is you've tangled more than one decision into one. So it could be like this. I'm moving to a new city. I'd like to look for jobs in this new city. And I got to find the right job. And I think I'm going to make a career change. So I got to put that in the decision. And where am I going to live? And am I going to buy a house or have an apartment? There are all these decisions that I'm throwing into one bucket that are actually distinct, related decisions. That's the mistake we make, is we tangle them into one. So the more we can pull them apart into unique decisions. So if I think about moving to a new city, I might say, well, I kind of want to know the landscape of the new city. I don't need to know if I'm going to live in a house or an apartment. I might want to have a sense about neighborhoods, right? Unburden that decision of moving to that city from like exactly where am I going to live. That's a downstream decision. Put them into time and put them into the buckets that they belong, right? And oftentimes when we start to untangle decisions is when we're like, oh, thank God, right? There's less uncertainty. There's too much uncertainty when you bundle things together, right? That's why we get stressed out, by the way, making decisions. If I didn't make this absolutely clear, uncertainty, it's too fuzzy. Let's get clearer about what is involved with this decision, and then we can move forward.
Fear of the unknown when it's fuzzy. Can't see through it.
Yeah.
And
well, and go ahead.
Friends and relatives are well-meaning, but I've had the experience where I'm trying to make a decision, a hard decision, and I will announce the decision. And then they try to bundle all the other decisions in there for me. It's like, so we're, then what are you going to do? And then what are you going to do? And how's that going to go? And what's the date? And I'm like, I don't know yet. When does it happen? Yeah.
When we put decisions into time, when we put decisions into time and by complexity, what ends up happening is we get to deal with today's decisions today. We get to like recognize decisions we've already made and that maybe we need to take the next step in, right? We recognize what we need to address today and how complex is it? Like, what support do we need in this decision based on complexity? And we also get to park tomorrow's decisions tomorrow and say, this is a downstream decision, or this is a related decision to today's decision. Like if I move to that new city, then downstream, I'll be thinking about where I'm going to live, but not today. So to be able to park that in the future and not be burdened with that reduces your cognitive load. So you have room to think.
We can all use that.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is, so I have an exercise called Sort Yourself Out that does this. It actually does this, and it's a download and it's free. So any viewers can just click on it, share it with friends. This onto paper, putting it into time and complexity that tells you, like, what do you need to do next, right? Puts it in a grid and it parks it there. So it's now outside your body so you can look at it.
Beautiful. Well, we will make sure that we link that below this video on YouTube as well as on the podcast description so that people can reach out to you. I know you've got a very busy day. So is there any last words or anything else that you want us to know about your system, how it works, or how to reach you?
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of content in below all of these 4 pillars, right? And people can always reach out to me through our website, clarityforaction.org. We have a link. If people are stuck in a decision and just need support, you can just schedule a free call. It's like our goal is to make it easy to create a revolution about how we all approach decision making. Like that's actually the change we can create in the world, is by becoming powerful decision makers and raising powerful decision makers. Like think about how the world could be changed if we just shifted the conversation about learning and decision reflection and decisions and outcomes. Yeah, I would just love to leave your viewers with, we're a resource. I do one-on-one coaching. We have an online course that's self-paced. If you just need to like go in and just be served at your own pacing. And we have decision laboratory cohorts that we get together as a group and we walk through all the stuff that's on the online course, but we do it together in mutual support. So it's a menu. Whatever people need, get what you need, see what you need, check in with yourself and get what you need. You're the decision maker. Take your power.
Take your power. You are the decision maker.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Amy Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Your way.
Thank you. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. So we will link Amy's information below, her website, the nonprofit, as well as the link to the free resource that she talked about. So reach out to Amy. She's helping you all live authentically and making the world a better place. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here on Authentic Living with Jenyce, and we'll see you next time.